Hey, we're cooking with gas here. On the Jewcast.
Okay, careful using a phrase like that.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries, of a sham.
Tradition!
Oh, shut up, Carl! Shut your goddamn Jew mouth! You people are why there's war in the Middle East!
Gekackt von Jahren.
Never.
Verpupupu.
Vermischt.
Verkackt.
Vertutzt.
Verstunken.
Warte.
Exactly.
You're what Grammy Hall would call a real Jew.
Hey now, what's happening? How'd you doing, man?
Oh, hey, what's up?
It's episode 71 of American Jew. I'm Jordan Ferber.
I'm Jonathan Randall.
And, I don't know if it's become apparent to you or not, but I feel like they keep saying that anti-Semitism is on the rise, but I just think it's being reported more. And if you really think about it, if people didn't report it as much, there'd be almost no anti-Semitism in the world.
That's one way of looking at things, Jordan, but I think there'd still be crazy anti-Semitism. We just wouldn't know about it, and we wouldn't be able to show solidarity with the people that were the victims of it.
I'm just saying it's been around all this time, and we're finally reporting on it more and putting it out in the open. And I think it's good that we're finally figuring out who these people are. They're really showing themselves.
Well, that's true, but I also think that it is on the rise. I mean, not only, of course, are things being reported more because of social media and because everybody has an access to a camera these days with their phone, but it just also happens to be that anti-Semitism is at an all-time high.
It really is. Trump in all of his speeches is really playing to his base, which pits anybody that's against him as fascists and people that want to take away their rights and who hate America. And that he's really speaking to white supremacists in a lot of those speeches, I think. His base is full of people who want things to go back to a very white nation. And
you're very right. One of the first times Trump was in the media was because there was a lawsuit against him for being discriminatory when it came to renting out places in New York City. And that was one of the first times he really gained public attention. Of course, what happened during the Central Park 5, which is another instance of him almost kind of inciting racism, where he took out ads in several New York newspapers about how they should bring back the death penalty and they should murder these, children that were basically falsely accused of rape. A lot of ugliness happened from them. It manipulated the public's opinion. The families got death threats. So, Trump, he might not be good at math, but he's very divisive. He is.
And even when he tries to be complimentary, he ends up being, anti-Semitic. When he spoke to a room full of Jewish people, he's like, I know you guys know about money. He was like, using anti-Semitic tropes he's like, what are you talking about? I was saying nice things about them.
Yeah, there's this anti-Semitic trope that's been going on for so long, and it just keeps on resurfacing. And it's basically that the Jews can control the banks. We control the world. We want to cause some chaos in different places in the world so we can benefit from it, so we could come out on top. And this has just been going on forever, and it never ends. And, we had an athlete. He, tweeted out some anti-Semitic remarks. He thought he was tweeting out quotes from Hitler, which weren't even real quotes from Hitler.
Yeah, which by the way,
didn't realize they were anti-Semitic.
Regardless of whether or not they are from Hitler or not, if your intention is to post quotes from Hitler, good job. It's the same. There's no difference between posting quotes that are not from Hitler that you think are attributed to Hitler, even though these are pretty terrible quotes about how.
I mean, these quotes are terrible, but I mean, if you're posting something from Hitler, it's pretty safe to say that it's anti-Semitic, and. Like, the fact that he was trying to post Hitler quotes and they weren't even real, like do your research at least, if you're going to try to post something that may or may not be anti-Semitic, at least so not only did he post anti-Semitic stuff, but he was kind of stupid because he posted something that wasn't even real.
Right. But he came out the next day and
said... So
we're
talking about Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, Deshaun Jackson. He came out the next day and said that anybody who feels that I have hate towards the Jewish community took my post the wrong way. First of all, I say this all the time. If you have to come out the next day and try to clarify what you said, your messaging was incorrect. But secondly, the quote that he posted, there's no other way to take it. It is anti-Semitic. It's literally,
You want to tell everybody what he kind of said?
He said, the quote that he posted says, Hitler said, because the white Jews know that the Negroes are the real children of Israel, and to keep Americans secret, the Jews will blackmail America. They will extort America, and their plan for world domination won't work if the blacks know who they are. The white citizens of America will be terrified to know that all this time they've been mistreating and discriminating against the lynching of the real children of Israel. They will fear God. They will destroy them as they destroyed Egypt for doing the same thing. So the elite, the Illuminati, keeps this a secret at all costs. After I die one day, it will cause World War III just by this message, which will be like planting a seed in the people's minds until it spreads once they nurture that seed and seek more truth and learn that Hitler was right. I don't know how you take that any other way. I don't know how you take...
I don't know how you take that any other way either.
There's no room for...
But hey, I love it how he says about the black Israelites. So if he gets dropped from the Eagles, I guess he could always go and have a spot in Times Square standing with them.
Have you ever tried to argue with the black Israelites?
No, I haven't.
Because, I mean, I've gone online and I've looked up some of the stuff that they believe. And, they believe that they are the first tribe of Israel. They are, the descendants of Israel that came from that region of the world. That would definitely be black men, and their real thing is just like shouting at other people about that they're the only real Jews, that the black Israelites are the original Jews and the only Jews. They used to have a public access show in New York City, actually, where they would shout at people on TV.
Yeah, they're pretty crazy people. Not that there weren't African American Jews, black Jews. I mean, we're all Jews. It doesn't matter what color our skin is. But the way they come at it is not very good. Deshaun Jackson, I don't know what he's thinking. He plays for a team that has a Jewish owner and has a Jewish general manager. They released a statement that the Eagles, that what he said was unacceptable. Apparently, he's going to go do some volunteer work with the Chabad in Philly. Who knows what's really going to happen? There were some other athletes that went to defend him that have since then been kind of, backstepping with what they said, realizing that, his remarks were anti-Semitic. And, I think Don Lemon was talking to one of them, and he said something, and she was like, just because you don't realize it's anti-Semitic doesn't mean that it's not anti-Semitic.
Right. Well, on top of that, my main problem is I really just disagree with the whole assertion that the black Israelites are superior. They're Jews. We're all Jews. Love your fellow Jew. Why can't that be the message? Why can't the message be, why can't we also be, if you want to take that position that the black Israelites are the original Jews, then we should, still be, we can still find ways to be appreciative that they gave it to the rest of us. But the whole, I think it goes against some of the tenets of Judaism to actively be so aggressive towards your fellow Jew, no matter where in the world they're from.
I mean, absolutely. There's so much, we opened the show with talking about how anti-Semitism is on the high all over the world. We don't need to be fighting amongst ourselves. We don't need to have hatred and bigotry amongst ourselves because of the color of our skin. We need to stay together as a people, as a religion. Everyone else is coming to get us. We don't need to be fighting amongst ourselves when they do.
Yeah, and it's happening, in New York too. There are a lot of anti-Israel and counter Palestinian protests happening in New York over the last couple of weeks. That tension is everywhere within Jewish communities and Middle Eastern communities. Melting pots around the country, and so there are New York being, I think, the biggest one. So those tensions are running high even in New York. There's divides within families. Now it's hard to figure out where you get the correct news from. Like, where do you watch the news? Do you watch TV?
The internet.
Mostly the internet?
No, only the internet.
I posted this on my Facebook the other day, saying that no matter where you get your misinformation from, don't forget that every one of these people on TV, that these TV pundits, they are not in the news business so much as they are in the advertising business. That is what the television really is. I mean, if you have commercials on the thing, you're in the advertising business. That's what it is. You're on
right.
You're on that channel because people are going to tune into that channel to watch you. I think to a certain degree, news is maybe a little bit less so in that category because they have so much, they have everybody on, but they all have their own particular point of view, and we all watch the one that has the people on that we agree with their bias, where we feel like
many people do that. I personally, I know when I'm reading articles online, I try to read something from a liberal side, something from a more conservative side, something that's a little more independent to try to get a more rounded view and perspective of the situation. It's crazy. You go and you Google Jews and you go to news, and it's just all these stories about anti-Semitism. It's about how neo-Nazis are encouraging people to infect Jews with coronavirus. It's how a professor in Argentina is telling his class that they'll give a bonus to anyone who finds him a poor Jew. It's just so much going on.
And
it's a Russian foreign minister talking about a book that blames the Jews for that Malaysian flight that went down. It's just nonstop. And people want to say the Rothschilds, they just control everything. They control the banks. They control the world. And
the
really
thing
does disservice.
It's interesting. I just find it interesting that like you and I look that stuff up ourselves, and we look, we read these stories, and really only like 1 in 5 of them is reported in the mainstream news right now, especially in an election year. It seems like that stuff is really swept under the rug a lot, especially now where there's so much focus on a larger picture, when I think there needs to be more focus on the individual things, because the systematic breakdown of recognizing what even the problems are in this country are just so wide, because so many people, I've said this on the show before, whatever you want to believe, there's somebody out there with a megaphone saying it. So you can justify any of your crazy beliefs. There are even people I know who are reasonable people, not necessarily full-on Trump people, but they support him because he's a Republican, and they are so anti-Democrat and the liberal thing that they get riled up by the whole anti-liberal bias that the president and his whole cabinet have some sort of vendetta against. It's hard to figure out where you can find an intelligent discussion that people listen to both sides anymore.
Well, it's very hard. People only want to see, their side of the story. It's very hard to get people to listen to both sides. I feel like that's what we definitely need more of, I mean, like you were saying that, you don't think a lot of these anti-Semitic stories are getting, the coverage that they deserve. I mean, hey, if an athlete would have went and made horrible comments and quoted slave owners about the African-American community these days, that athlete would probably be fired. But Deshaun Jackson makes these horrible things about the Jews, and it's kind of like, oh, whatever, he's sorry. But, you're saying, that people they don't want to see the other side. And I feel like I've been experiencing that a lot, online, where, I posted some videos, showing sympathy for the Palestinian people against the occupation. And I just kind of have been very shocked with a lot of the responses I've gotten, where so many Palestinian people, so many Arab Muslim people have reached out to me with just love and support and appreciation for me, raising awareness. A lot of them are amazed. Oh my God, you're a Jew? I can't believe you're a Jew. Like it's so foreign. They think all Jews just want to kill them and destroy them. But it's also been shocking to me how many Israeli people have, reached out to me, and how little they really seem to know, and how much they want to say, you don't live here, you don't know what it's like, which is 100% true, but still they want to shout these facts that just aren't true. Yesterday there was a guy who kept going out, oh, the word Palestine wasn't even invented till 1968. I'm like, dude, that's just not true. It's so hard to have an argument with somebody who it's like, yo, do a basic Google search and you can find out that everything that you're saying is wrong. I can't have an argument with somebody when it's where they're coming from is a place where it's total fantasy.
Well, that's why it's funny. The guy that was yelling at you on Instagram. It's it doesn't work if you just want to talk at me. You want to talk at me? Go ahead. I'm going to block you. I have no need to be talked at about something. Want to have a discussion? That's fine.
Yeah, some people, just want to pick a fight.
A conversation.
Some people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
But here's where I stand, for honestly, because I don't want there to be confusion. I believe there should be a state of Israel. I also believe there should be a state of Palestine. I believe that what has happened to the Palestinian people over the years has not been good and has not been something that Jewish people, the Israeli people, that more people than any people should want to treat another people. Now, that being said, of course, the Palestinian authorities, of course, Hamas, there are many other entities keeping the Palestinian down. It's not just Israel. Israel isn't like the only thing that's against the Palestinian people. Their own governments are keeping them down too. But I really want Israel to rise above, to help free the Palestinian people from the oppression. Because the truth is, in 1948, if Israel didn't become a country, it wouldn't have become Palestine. The other Arab nations would have just eaten up that land and taken those people in and treated them not in great situations, probably.
Well, I think that is a great segue for our guest today. I think perfect timing to have this discussion.
So let's just for a little history about our guest. Our guest today is a former Israeli soldier. He's a current law student who actually works as a guard for the district attorney's office in Israel. Now, the way I met this guy, his name is Jonathan Ventura, is from one of my videos. He had a problem with my video speaking out against the treatment of the Palestinian people. He kind of went very hard at me in the comments. I got thousands of comments on these videos. It was very hard for me to respond to all of them, especially videos that kind of came to me with like anger, hate, and false information. I wasn't really that eager to respond back to. A lot of his comments, I really didn't understand what he was saying, what his arguments were. It made no sense. It was like I didn't even know how to get into it with him in the comments. He kept on persisting to the point where he's like, oh, he won't even talk to me. He won't even engage with me. He's just a one-sided argument person, and he doesn't know what it's like, and blah, blah, blah. And I reached out to him, and I explained to him, listen, you obviously have a passion about this. You obviously have experience that I don't know about. You obviously live in Israel, and there's different information that you know that I don't know. But going at it in the comment section isn't the way to do this. So if you want to have a conversation, we can. We did. We set up a call. We talked a little bit, and he had some very interesting experiences and some things to say, and I thought it'd be great to bring him on the show. So we're going to have him on the show today.
All right, we're very excited to have Jonathan Ventura on the show. He's an Israeli citizen. He's an ex-Israeli soldier. He's a current law student. Thanks for coming on, Jonathan.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, where are you coming to us from?
I'm right now at work. I work at the DA's office in Tel Aviv. I'm a security guard, and I'm on a break right now.
Nice. So Jonathan, you're a second generation Israeli soldier, right? You mentioned to me that your father was in the army too.
Yes, that's right. My dad was also a soldier. He also was an IDF officer, and so were my older brothers, two of them. Yep.
So when you were growing up, was that something that like you really looked up to and you were excited about the prospect of joining yourself?
I grew up on foundations like caring for one another and doing all you can to protect your beloved ones and share and on some sort of military values. That's the way I grew up. Me and my brothers. Yes.
So like you share like ammunition and make sure you all get the right amount of defense. Trying to be funny there. Sorry. I guess sometimes my jokes don't always land.
Yeah. Okay. It's well, I don't know if defense would be what we needed from our dad, but we had a very loving family and very caring and loving would be the word. The way that our family actually was and still is. Yeah. Yes.
Have you listened to our podcast before, or is it really just having responded to Jonathan's TikToks that we're talking to you?
Exactly. I haven't heard any of your podcasts, unfortunately, but I've heard some of Jonathan's videos on TikTok. So yeah, that's the way our connection began.
Well, you should start listening to the show, because that way you get both of our terrible jokes.
Jonathan is a great comedian. I love any and each of his jokes.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate that. So let's talk a little more serious. So growing up in your house, where your brothers, fought for Israel, your father fought for Israel, what was kind of the view of the Palestinian people and the whole situation with Palestine?
Okay. Firstly, I'd say that our political views in my family are very different. I mean, my brother and my sister think very differently. So do my mom and my dad. We are very plural. We value the fact that people can have many different point of views and political wise. The main thing that all of us believe, I think that not only in my family but also entirely in Israel, is that in order to achieve any sort of solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, all solutions should be reached with words, with negotiation. And we think that the main problem with the Palestinian leadership is that they aren't willing to solve these problems that we have, these things that we can't settle right now with negotiation. Sometimes, I mean, also when at the year 2000 with Prime Minister Ehud Barak, so was it with Prime Minister Ehud Olmert at the year 2008. And so was it with the current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when he stopped all building projects in the West Bank in order to let Mahmoud Abbas join him to the negotiation office, and each time they refused. So and each time the way they actually responded was with more terror, with more attacks, with more innocents being harmed. And that's the main problem, I believe, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That's the way I see it, and that's the way I believe that most Israelis see it.
Right. It's a very difficult situation because Israel has made some efforts, but every time Israel kind of makes an effort, it kind of gets smacked away. The Palestinian authorities,
Exactly.
whether it be Hamas or whatever, they're not interested in it. So this is great because we talk a lot on the podcast about we want to end the occupation, about our sympathy for the Palestinian people, but while we do think Israel is involved a little bit with the Palestinian oppression, it's not Israel alone. Israel's not the only one that's keeping the Palestinians back. The Palestinian authorities keeping them back. Hamas is keeping them back. It's kind of like they're all fighting against each other, while the people that are really suffering are the Palestinian people. Now, you told me a story, Jonathan. I hope you'll share again for anyone that's listening, any Palestinian people that are listening, any Muslim people, any Arab people. I just want you to share this anecdote because I think it is important for them to hear where Israeli soldiers, where Israeli people are coming from when they kind of have this fear of Palestinian people, where they kind of have this thought that Israel needs to do more annexation and they need more land because it's for security. If you'll tell me the story of when you and your unit, you encountered some Palestinians and a friend of yours was injured. Would you mind sharing that with the podcast?
Yes, of course. At the year, I don't quite recall if it was 2014 or 2015. I served in parts of the West Bank. And there were some farmers, some people that worked with, I don't know, they had grapevines along their lands, and we got familiar with them. We spoke with them they were sort of friends of us every time they passed by and they saw us. And at one time, what actually happened is that one of these farmers encountered a friend of mine from my unit, from my platoon, and he stabbed him for no reason. And this friend of mine ended up very badly. At first, we didn't know if he's going to make it, if he's going to survive, but he is alive now, and he left the army because he couldn't handle it anymore. And that's the point where we actually understood. By the way, it was after the war at 2014, after the war in Gaza. And this kind of got us thinking. This was a very constituting point in my life, and I believe in many other soldiers from my unit, because we truly believed, and we wanted to believe that the people that we encounter each and every day are innocent as they look and as they speak. And this was a breaking point, because we didn't expect that. And, these were people that we spoke with, and people that we shared a smile or a morning greeting. Leave aside the surprise. It was some sort of a disappointment, because, I understand that all the problems in our conflict and all the history, but the moment you meet someone, the moment you share just a slight moment with a person, you'd expect that he won't stab you the moment that he was able to. That if you could just leave your weapons, or just not use them if you can, if you're able to not use them, just don't. Right. And that's exactly what didn't happen. And it was some sort of a breaking point for us. And so whenever we were in the West Bank, and afterwards when I was also a commander and an officer, I always taught my soldiers, and I acted exactly the same way myself, is to treat people in the West Bank, those who are under a military regime right now, to treat them with as much humanity as you can, but always be suspicious, always suspect. You can never be too safe. You can never be too careful.
Do you think that that's a mentality that kind of permeates both sides of that issue? Like, both sides are taught very early on to not trust the other side no matter what? Like, even if you become friendly with them, and you can find some common ground and some humanity, but don't put down your guard, because they'll stab you in the back. Do you think that's a thing that both? I feel like that's an idea that both sides hold. Like, that's one of the reasons why real conversation doesn't happen sometimes in these discussions, because no matter how deep that conversation gets, I feel like that's a conversation that doesn't get had by it's not an admission that they make to each other.
I told Jonathan when we had this talk that if I was born in Gaza, I wouldn't believe that I'd be anything else other than also a Hamas terrorist. It's I can definitely understand this, because they see what their leadership wants them to see. All they can see is us striking their mosques and hospitals and schools, and they aren't aware of the fact that Hamas shelters weapons there, rockets there, missiles there, that are aimed at our cities, at our children, at our families. So all that the kids could see there is us striking their grandparents' homes. So right. It's definitely a thing that I can understand. But the point is that Israel is a democracy. It's a thriving democracy. People here can criticize our prime minister, our judges, our courts, and the freedom of speech here is very powerful. And people here know that there are problems with our leadership, and they're aware that there are also innocent people at the other side. Here, the Israeli minorities, such as the Arab minority, such as the Palestinian minority that are Israeli civilians, can make it to any important job they would so desire. Here, as someone that works at the DA's office, I could tell that 40% of the prosecutors here, the attorneys here, are saved to Arab people, because we care about our minorities, and we are always open to solve our problems with words. So if some people believe that they don't get their rights and they don't get justice, they're always welcome to speak and achieve their justice.
Do you think that Netanyahu really has that same position, though? I feel like Netanyahu's not much of an inclusionary figure. He really is, I think, rather divisive, and he appeals to like a certain base that I think gives preferential treatment to, for sure.
The beautiful thing here in Israel is that it doesn't matter what Netanyahu thinks, because he might be the prime minister and he might be the head of the operational authority here in Israel, but it doesn't mean anything, because here, as a democracy, he also has boundaries. If he wants to not let the freedom of speech thrive as it is thriving here in Israel, he's not going to be permitted to.
Well, I think that's a little bit extreme of a thing. But for example, I have a friend. We have a friend that was on the show here earlier who said that he supports Netanyahu because he was elected. Because he was elected, the Jewish people have spoken. This is the man that they want to have lead them. So he trusts in his judgment, and because he was elected. But I feel like it took 3 times for them to sort of give up, because there wasn't a clear winner. I mean, there was they were deadlocked. It was. I mean, what I don't know what percentage put him into power. Versus just throwing their hands up.
As a law student, I can say that there are many sorts of democracies in the world. The Israeli democracy is pretty much based on the British one. The British democracy lets many parties be elected. The one parliament member from their House of Lords, the one parliament member that the most of the parliament members have elected to be the prime minister, he is going to be the one who would try to establish a ministry. He will try to establish his authority if he gets the majority in their parliament. So it is in Israel. At 2 of the elections, it didn't happen, because Netanyahu didn't achieve all the parliament members required. At the 3rd time, there were some sort of compromise, and two sides made concessions, and they understood that there must be a government that is two-sided. That 2 sides of our political map had to join together and be one big, maybe too large of a government. That's what happened in Israel, and it happened twice before. Once at the 80s and at the establishment of Israel. It might happen sometimes in the history, and every time it happens, it's with great concessions from both sides, and that's what's, I believe, good in parliamentary democracy, unlike presidential democracy, when the election is obsolete and both sides understand who's the winner, but actually the president might have less voters than the one who actually lost.
Well, I'm just trying to tell that to my friend as well. I mean, it's the same debate that people have about Donald Trump. I mean, even though he was elected, he actually lost the popular vote. So, I mean, the people that support him you can't argue with those people either. I just find that, there has to be an understanding that a lot of people in Israel don't agree with Netanyahu. There are a lot of people that don't necessarily think that He should be the one in power. And there are a lot of people that I hear talking about the fact that even though people say all that that the Israelis made all these concessions, things continue to happen. Settlements continue to expand. You know, I feel like they didn't make as many concessions as they agreed to in actual practice, and that has caused a lot of that tension to rise. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of people working together or having real debates about it, talking out these issues versus forcing their way, forcing something more violent.
I think that's one of the advantages of our kind of democracy. Because here, when we have this sort of arrangement, this sort of government, both sides understand that they have to rely on one another to pressure the side that they don't agree with. And the way to pressure it is to expose all of the disagreements that the government has. That's what the press must do. I mean, I believe that at a healthy democracy, the press always must put pressure on the government. Here, if our government splits, the two sides decide that they can't work it out anymore. So the one who initiates this split, this ending of the government, he's going to be the one who ends up without the leadership of this government. He's going to be one who's going to be laid out. And I don't know if it's a good thing, but I believe that these are parts of a healthy way to work out this sort of conflict, this sort of inherent conflict in our government. And by the way, most of the time it doesn't happen. Most of the time there is one candidate that gets the most of the majority in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament. And sometimes it does happen, and that's the way that we solve it. I mean, they might not work it out exactly the way that they thought it would be worked out, but that's just the way it is, I guess.
So, Jonathan, to change the subject a little bit, you are a law student. You do work for the DA's office. When we spoke, you told me something that I haven't heard a lot of, that I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard a lot of. That is that when people have a claim to the land, if they want, they could take it to the Israeli Supreme Court.
Exactly. They have the right to file a motion to the Supreme Court of Israel in order to demand their alleged lands back. And as long as they satisfy the burden of proof, of course, the Supreme Court of Israel would give this decision, this sentence that the lands are going to go back to them, because that's what the Israeli court believes. That's the way. That's their standings each and every time. And as a law student who has read many of those cases, I can tell many Israelis believe that it's unjust for them because they had all the permissions required in order to build their homes in the West Bank, and so it went through 4 decades that Israeli government let Israelis and Jews build their homes, also when it was a left-wing government here in Israel. And many Israelis feel that this is unjust. But on the other hand, the Israeli Supreme Court understands that they have to give people who their lands were stolen, if the burden of proof is satisfied, to give their lands back. And that's what happens here in Israel. That's the way it works. No lands can be stolen, and judges would sit quietly and not doing a thing. And by the way, there are many movements here in Israel that work very hard in order to give back lands that are actually stolen. And by the way, as an Israeli law student, I believe that that's very just, that any sort of conflict, any sort of argument, any sort of problem that two people have can and must be solved with words and at courts, and that judges would decide. And none should be solved with rocks or rockets or hands or weapons.
You know,
Absolutely.
I think what's interesting, I think about this a lot. I think that one of the problems that this it comes up is not just because it's something of like a civil war within that land, but it's like the whole notion of anti-Semitism and persecution of the Jewish people is also brought into it, because it connects to the anti-Semitism that the Jews have been fighting against for generations. You know, the whole reason that we have chosen that space is because that's what the land that we claim God gave to us as our land of milk and honey. So even though it's like famously, people always joke about how we seem to have chosen the one spot that's surrounded by the people that hate us the most. But I wonder, what you think about that whole notion of, because the thing that we talk about on the show a lot about as American Jews, there's a big debate in this country that talks about whether or not you are allowed to be against the policies that the Israeli government has put in place to oppress the Palestinians, and if you agree with them that you're anti-Israel, the Israeli policy, that you're anti-Semitic, and it tends to be really complicated. Complicates two separate issues is what it complicates really.
Firstly, I'd say that those who claim that being against Israel is being anti-Semite within specific problems, conflicts about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has roots. The reason is that here in Israel, the Arab minority, which is about between 20 to 25% of the Israeli population, are complete equal here in Israel. And some of the times, and I can guarantee on that, I have read those cases, they have prerogatives. They have more rights than the Jews in order to be inserted in the population in Israel better. So on the other hand, the Palestinian regime, the Palestinian leadership, they wouldn't allow any Jew, someone that his mother is Jewish, wouldn't allow any Jew to build their homes in future Palestine, and neither in the A territories right now at the West Bank. So if this isn't racism, I don't know what is, because they may have their homeland, their country, their lands, but why should you won't permit any Jewish people, any Jewish person to have their home in Palestine if they so desire? They feel that their roots are in this land quite as well.
Well, listen, I think the thing that we talk about on this show, though, is that like I'm allowed to be somebody that stands up for the rights of all people, not just the Jewish people. So I think that I don't have to agree with all of the policies that the Israeli government has put in place, and certainly I'm not an expert on foreign policy. I've never lived in that area. I've been to Israel, but it was when I was a kid, and so my whole perspective over time has changed about a lot of things as well. But I think that I wonder if I think that I can be for all people and not be anti-Semitic just because I'm not necessarily standing with Hamas, and I find that there are factions on both sides that really part of their whole plan is a complete destruction of the other side, and that's how we attain peace, and that's just not how that's going to work. But I mean, also, it's great.
Well,
we talked about this last week about how, if you look at it, it's one of the great failures of the British Empire to hold on to pieces of land far, far away from their own home when they gave up trying to create peace, and instead left a puzzle for everybody else to figure out. That ultimately the lines that were drawn in the sand in like 1918 or whatever, when the British left. It was a mess, and that hasn't been able to be put back together properly.
Yeah,
but
left and taken with them many archaeological treasures from the Middle East. Yes. Well, I see this issue as some sort of that people don't really understand what Zionism is actually about, because they claim around the world, and so in the UN Assembly, that Zionism is racist, while actually Zionism is exactly the opposite. Because here and built is all people have rights. All people are equal. All people have the right to be heard in courts, and have the right to be heard at our parliament, and have rights to be heard in the media. And the problem is that at the other side, they won't allow anyone to be heard other than their leadership, other than their ideas. I mean, in Gaza Strip, after we left, and making sure they're going to have their elections in the Gaza Strip, they have elected Hamas to take over Gaza. What happened afterwards? They persecuted the Fatah party and led them back to the West Bank, and that's exactly the opposite of the way Israel operates. Israel works at the way that everyone has the right to speak, everyone is equal, everyone has rights, and that what indicates that Israel is a perfect democracy that works for all people, that doesn't see any difference between people from other races. The one thing that it does separate people or people between other nations is that Israel is considered as the homeland of the Jewish people. So anyone who's Jew, because he or she were persecuted around the world, are able to go to Israel, and Israel would be their new homeland, because there we weren't able to live. There we were slaughtered, killed, and led to gas chambers. And that's the only difference between people here in Israel. Everyone has the same rights. Everyone is able to be elected. Everyone is able to vote, and everyone is able to file a motion to the Israeli Supreme Court and achieve justice.
Would you say that you identify more as a Jew or more as an Israeli, or are they so tied together that you can't put one above the other?
You know, if I was born in not in 2020, and I would be born at 1820, I wouldn't be Israeli. And I would only be a Jew. I would only be Jewish. And that what would probably stick with me, even when there won't be maybe one day any country. So I guess that I consider myself firstly a human, because that's what connects all of us. Afterwards, I consider myself a Jew, and afterwards I consider myself an Israeli.
Cool. Well, we kind of got to wrap up here.
All right, let's ask you some quick questions that we like to ask all our guests. What is your favorite Jewish food?
Jewish food, I would say couscous. I know it's originated in Tunisia, but that's part of our traditional foods. So yeah, I'd say couscous.
Nice.
What's your favorite Jewish holiday?
That would be Hanukkah, because of the donuts.
Because of the donuts. Those are good. Sufganiyot.
Yes.
And
You
the
know, it's
last
funny.
question
Jonathan always
would be
Jonathan brings up the donuts every year on Hanukkah. And I didn't grow up eating donuts on Hanukkah.
It's a shame.
I know.
yeah, you got to get it.
Got to get into that tradition.
The last question we like to ask is, who's your favorite Jew of all time?
My favorite Jew. I guess that would be. Let me think about it. Oh, it's a tough one. I guess it would be my father.
Oh, that's very sweet. That's very nice.
Yes.
Well, Jonathan, we thank you so much for coming on the show. We hope we'll have you back. We really appreciate your perspective. We appreciate your service that you've done for the Israeli country. We appreciate your whole attitude that you have about democracy, about love for all people, and we appreciate you sharing your experience and your insight and knowledge as a law student and someone that works at the DA's office with us.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here on your show. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Jonathan.
Talk to you soon, Jonathan.
Oh boy, well that was one hell of a discussion. It is always better to have that.
Yeah, you know.
It is always better to have those discussions outside the comment section. Like that's not where you have intelligent debates. In the comment section of anything.
It's very important to be open to all perspectives and be open to all experiences, and everybody deserves to have a part of the conversation. But the only thing that isn't, part is if you're just so closed off and you're so attached to your ideas, you can't even open up your mind to accept the possibility that you don't know everything, that you're not 100% correct, and that there's more out there, and that the things you may be feeling, other people may be having the same feeling. So
Right.
we urge you, if you have opinions on this, please email us. Please put them, on our Facebook page, put them on our Instagram, put them on our Twitter. We're basically American Jew Podcast on all social media platforms. Email us, AmericanJewPodcast@gmail.com. If you think there's something we should talk about, if there's a guest you think we should have, if you think we got something wrong and you want to, share your opinion, we'd love to hear it. Of course, you could find me on social media across all platforms at Jonathan Randall.
And you can find me on Instagram at BeatnikNudnik. But also, I just want to say a quick note at the end here. I don't always talk about my other podcast so much, or my foundation. But this past week was we just passed the 18-year anniversary of the death of my brother Russell. So I had an interesting weekend. I've often used an analogy that a friend of mine had that grief is like its own being. When my grief turned 13, I said it was a bar mitzvah, which really only meant that I had to start paying for my own tissues. And this year, my grief is 18, which means it's finally an adult. It's time to get a job. This grief has been living with me for 18 years. It's finally time it starts pulling its own weight. So we need to get some sponsorship for this podcast. If you would like to sponsor our podcast, we're happy to put some support behind people that support us. So make sure you email us at American Jew Podcast to make that happen. And in addition, in regards to my brother, my family started a foundation called the Russell Ferber Foundation, aptly named, I would say. And we are having a virtual fundraiser for our foundation this year. And so if you follow Russell Ferber Foundation on Facebook and on Instagram, you'll get information about when that is going to be happening towards the end of August. So thanks so much. We will have more Jew-tastic news next time.